Lynchburg, Virginia, a downtown reawakening in a new century. New life, new people. Historic buildings adapted to modern uses. Millions invested in restoration and expansion projects. Millions more in public works. Here, the present echoes the past. In the early 1900s, there was another awakening in another new century for the city. As the 19th century came to a close, Lynchburg was already in a 20-year run of new prosperity. The city's 1886 centennial marked a turning point, a point where the city pushed away from the antebellum South and embraced a new way of life. The tobacco-based economy gave way to manufacturing. Mills and foundries and factories followed, along with the new moniker for the city, quote, the Pittsburgh of the South. Some of the industries established in this era would support Lynchburg for much of the coming century. The wealth that followed would transform the city. Everything seemed better in the new Lynchburg. Streets were paved and sewered. Downtown became a banking center. New neighborhoods arose. New sources of power and water were developed. A new high school was built, replacing one built only 10 years earlier. A library opened. Colleges were founded. The Academy of Music Theater was completed, replacing the Lynchburg Opera House as the premier theater. Stores opened, consumers followed. Lynchburg had become the central marketing center of Virginia, serviced by 3 great rail trunk lines. By 1912, the city was producing $15 million in finished products annually, almost $400 million in today's dollars. In per capita income, Lynchburg was now the 3rd wealthiest city in the United States. At this time, there were 2 upscale hotels in the growing city. It was time for a better one. The newly formed Lynchburg Chamber of Commerce established the Lynchburg Hotel Corporation in 1911. Architect Verus Taggart Britter was contracted. The choice gave the Virginian a distinguished architectural pedigree. Ritter of Muncie, Pennsylvania, was new to the field. He had been in business for only 5 years. After the Virginian project, he would partner with Howell Shea of Philadelphia and design several significant hotels and landmark buildings in Pennsylvania and Ohio. Ritter and Shea were considered the, quote, cutting-edge architects of Jazz-age Philadelphia. Construction was underway within 6 months. Spectators watched 5 stories of steel beams in reinforced concrete, evidence of a modern, fireproof design, rise above Lynchburg. Retired Circuit Court Judge Laban Mosby's grandfather watched the Virginian Hotel as it was going up. Mosby has a long family history in Lynchburg. He and his wife Mercedes came to the hotel with a gift. An antique dish from the hotel had been in the family for years.
Grandfather and father had a Walker Motors and Calvert real estate business here. It started in 1890 across the street. So this hotel started in 1913. So my grandfather was across the street when the hotel was built. And then my father and my uncle both worked there. So it was in the family for over 100 years.
The hotel opened with more than 100 rooms in April of 1913. Lynchburg wanted a better hotel, and it got one. On opening day, hundreds poured through the doors to take in the grand lobby and the men's and women's cafes on the first floor. They marveled at the large banquet facility on the second, and they paused at the coffee shop and cigar stand. Below was a barber shop staffed by, quote, an able corps of barbers. The billiard room had 9 tables. 45 of the rooms had a private bath, 15 of those with showers. The rest had a shower down the hall. This in an era when indoor plumbing was a luxury beyond most homeowners. It would be 1930 before even half of the homes in America had it. The furniture was made by Nelson Matter, makers of fine-grade residential and hotel furniture. The lobby furniture was by Carpin, then a well-known maker of European-inspired designer furniture. Each room had hot and cold running water and a telephone. The beds were mahogany or brass with, quote, box spring and 45-pound hair mattress. The kitchen was appointed with the latest industrial-scale appliances, including a refrigeration unit that could hold 10 tons of ice. There were 15 large sample rooms. Luxury hotels in that era provided sample rooms for traveling salesmen to display their wares. Salesmen had to travel by train, and hauling samples from town to town was out of the question. There was a writing room, and it was furnished with individual desks. You could get a manicure in the barber shop. You could be fitted for a suit of clothes in the tailor shop. You could buy theater tickets in the lobby. The hotel boasted of using the Hicks checking method, a process of recording and tabulating meal and rooming costs developed by John T. Hicks, a Boston restaurateur. If you were handed a Hicks check in that era, you knew the tally was proper. The first registered guest was Selwyn Eugene Bickford, an insurance agent from Hampton, Virginia. The first convention was held a week later, the annual meeting of the Virginia Division of the Travelers Protective Association, a fraternal society of traveling salesmen. The first dance was a Benedict's cotillion. For the next 50 years, the Virginian would be the standard for elegant hotels in the region. Its exquisite rooms and elaborate decorations and furnishings made it well known as one of Virginia's premier hotels, and it became a fixed star in downtown Lynchburg. It was good to be near the Virginian. In the first decade of operation, there were unusual guests in the lobby.
My grandfather owned a white steam car here in Lynchburg. They used brand new automobiles to put in the lobby here in the hotel on display to attract new dealers. Cars with such demand, not a luxury car. White was like a doctor or a dentist or a judge automobile. It was not a Ford or such as that.
At the start of the Roaring '20s, Lynchburg's population had grown by 10,000 since the day the hotel opened. There was a hotel building boom nationwide. Americans were adopting a new standard of hospitality. You wanted that new standard no matter what.
Back in 1925, my mother graduated from Longwood College, Teachers College back then, and Dad was working downtown driving a horse and wagon for a Humboldt oil company, delivering kerosene in 5-gallon cans. And I guess they'd been dating or something, and Mother couldn't ever get Dad to pull the trigger. So she decided to take a job teaching in Puerto Rico. So she got on a steamboat and went to Puerto Rico and taught school down there. And I guess it worked because Dad just kept on writing and writing, asking her to come back, he wanted to marry her. And so she finally agreed, and so she caught the steamer and back to New York, where we pulled in, and Dad took a train to New York. He met Mother up there when she got off of the steamer, but then she held his feet to the fire. She said, "Well, I'm not going to marry you unless you buy me a diamond at Tiffany's." So they went to Tiffany's, and he bought her a beautiful diamond ring. And then they went to St. Thomas Episcopal Church and got married, and then caught the afternoon train, or whatever train, back to Lynchburg. Well, when they got to Lynchburg, he checked her into the Virginian Hotel, and they spent the night here. So when he got up the next morning, Dad was absolutely dead broke. He'd spent every cent he had between the train up, the train down, and the ring at Tiffany's. He didn't have any way to pay the hotel bills. And so he had to leave Mother here as collateral until he went around town and borrowed enough money from people he knew to pay the hotel bill and get her out of here. And that's my story. And it's all true.
In 1925, a sixth story was added to the hotel. This designed by Lynchburg architects Stanhope Johnson and R.O. Brannan. Johnson, who was midway through his long career at the time, is still considered the dean of Lynchburg architects. He topped the Virginian in colonial revival style, which was very much in vogue at the time. The Roaring Twenties did indeed roar. By decade's end, Lynchburg's population had grown by another 10,000. Big dreams followed. Stanhope Johnson designed an ambitious 9-story annex to the Virginian. It would be constructed across 8th Street and connected to the hotel by an enclosed walkway. It would be a magnificent addition not only to the hotel, but to downtown Lynchburg. But that dream, like so many others, died in the stock market crash of 1929. Twin calamities, the collapse in the American financial markets and the drought-driven Dust Bowl in Western America, put this country into the Great Depression during the 1930s. Virginia, though, fared better than most states during those years. The state suffered the same hardships, only less severe than what the rest of the nation endured. Industrial productivity and employment actually rose in the last half of the decade. In Lynchburg, there were other bright spots in the 30s. Radio arrived with station WLVA. The city built its first airport. Side by side, football and baseball stadiums were constructed on former fairgrounds. The city's tallest building was completed. The Art Deco Allied Arts Building, also designed by Stanhope Johnson, was built across the street from the hotel. The Virginian had to settle for a smaller edition. In 1933, a 6-story north wing was added again, designed by Johnson. This addition, plus the additional floor added in 1925, doubled the number of rooms to 200. The Virginian cemented its position as a primary destination.
I'm a native of Lynchburg and born in 1928. And my first memories, early memories of the Virginian Hotel were the Sunday dinners with my family in the dining room of the hotel, which was a real treat for us and for all. The dining room was lovely, as I remember. As you entered from Church Street, it was into the lobby and off to your left. It was elegant dining area with white linens and silver, and the food was wonderful, and they always had a nice crowd, everybody dressed up. No such thing as going in there without a coat and tie on.
The 1930s also saw the arrival of a delightful 2-year-old girl who would live at the Virginian for the next 20 years.
We moved in because my mother said if we don't, hotel work in those days, maybe still is 24/7. I mean, the place is open all the time. So you've either got to be on call or you got to be here. And so she felt like that to really, for me to know my father, that we should move into the hotel, which was taking a pretty big step, you know, to raise a child in a hotel. I remember coming into the lobby and all the people, you know, sort of overwhelming, but I settled in pretty rapidly. We lived up on the 3rd floor at rooms 307 and 308. I'll never forget it. A most unusual childhood because I didn't have a neighborhood. I didn't have children to play with. My kindergarten teacher called me up and said, called my mother rather, and said, Barbara doesn't know what grass is. Is there something wrong with her? You know? And I didn't know because I looked out the window and what did I see? Concrete. So I went up and down the halls on my tricycle. Then I go down to City Hall and ride around down there to see what was going on. Then come back. We didn't have kitchen. I had to dress 3 times a day. You know, I couldn't wear pajamas. I had to always look nice. And that's why I eat so slow. My friends kid me about it because I eat slow because I was looking around. People would stop at the table, how are you? And I'd take a mouthful. And then I'd look around, you know, a little more, you know. But I ate 3 times a day, that's right. So got to know Lynchburg people too pretty well.
In a building like the Virginian, keeping the moving parts moving was a 10-man job that one man managed to do.
My grandfather, Floyd Edward Inge, was the stationary engineer here at the Virginian from about 1934 until his death in 1947. He was responsible for the boilers, the air conditioning system, the power plant, the refrigeration equipment, kitchen equipment, all of that. He's the one that made sure this place was kept up and running.
My father worked here. I visited him on Saturdays. My mother and I would come down and see the movies and go and see my dad and have lunch here. It was like in a basement part, and it's an alleyway through there. And we went through that door, and he had a huge room there, and he had tools and all this stuff in there. And then across from him was the laundry room. And I can see the laundry room there because it was machines in there. I guess it would have been 25 machines, I'm not exaggerating. They're washing clothes and drying clothes all the time. And then on the other side was the meat department, and it was one man that took care of the meat, and when they come down and say, I need a side of beef, he got it ready and took it upstairs. And then further on up, I would go every Saturday, and it was like, I called it a cafeteria, but it was really the kitchen, and I would go in there. Of course, I don't know, 7, 8 years old, but anyway, I would go in the kitchen, and they would say, what do you want? Or you just go down and pick out what you want, and then I would go, my mother and I, and then we would go back down to his office and eat our lunch with him, and that was only on Saturday, so that we could go to the Academy Theater and see Hopalong Cassidy or Roy Rogers or somebody like that. He worked 7 days a week here, and he loved it. He worked 6 days all day long, and on Sunday he got off a half a day. 6 or 7 cats, they were all alley cats that came around, and he didn't want to run them away, so he kept them, you know, and he would feed his old alley cats. Well, that was
mice away too.
Yeah, I kept the mice away, and that was, you know, one of the things that he loved to do.
Lynchburg's factories switched into overdrive and began working 24 hours a day when America entered the Second World War. The city and the Virginian became a hub of activity for servicemen.
Trains were a huge part of Lynchburg in those days because the Norfolk Western and the Southern and the C&O all crossed in Lynchburg. And during those war years, they probably had 20 passenger trains a day going north and south, coming through Lynchburg.
All during the war, there was a lot of activity down here, it seemed, with soldiers from Camp Pickett. They just flooded downtown Lynchburg, and the Virginian Hotel being the center point.
And every weekend, where did Camp Pickett come? To Lynchburg, you know. And the hotel was filled with soldiers, and there were some naval people who came from somewhere, I don't know. But anyway, they came here, and I'll never forget, this really kind of scared me, but it shouldn't have. We were in the lobby, and this soldier came by and grabbed me, just picked me up like that. And my mother said, oh, no. And he says, no problem, I just miss my little girl. I have a little girl her age.
In World War II, in 1944, a factory in New York State was making Navy fighter planes. I keep on saying jets, but of course they weren't jets back in 44. And as a shakedown cruise, they would fly from the Floyd Bennett Field in New York to Lynchburg and RON, which means remain overnight, and then fly to Pensacola. And that was the shakedown for the brand new planes. Now, there weren't very many officers, maybe 5 or 6. And I assumed that when they landed at the Lynchburg airport, some conveyance brought them to the Virginian Hotel. And there were 5 or 6 of us, girls, who would come down and just be hostesses for the evening, you know, play records or dance or have drinks or something. Nobody left the building or anything. And it didn't happen every night. It was just whenever they were coming in. And we all got to be friends because usually it was the same pilots each time. I know one girl, Barbara Goff, who of course has gone to her reward, she said she would hear the roar of planes and go and say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and call her 5 girls, say, come on down, the pilots are here. And that's the way we did it. And I knew one flyer pretty well. His name was Bill Bay, and he was from Michigan. And when he was coming in town, he would buzz my house to say, you know, here I am. And I was also going to Randolph-Macon at the time, and so when he left, he'd buzz the school. Say, well, goodbye. Unfortunately, he went down in the Bermuda Triangle, but that happened a lot in the war. But it was just a little piece of the war that the Virginian took part in.
Even in wartime, domestic life continued at the hotel.
When I was a little boy, my uncle's florist was right below the hotel, Charles E. Berg. And when I got a good report card, a really good report card, and that didn't happen every time, my aunt, Mrs. Berg, would take me to lunch on a Saturday afternoon. So I would put on my Sunday clothes and take the bus and come down and meet her at the florist. And then we would walk up the hill and have lunch at the Virginian. And it was rather grand because, you know, when you're 6, 7, 8 years old, going to a big restaurant filled with important looking people, it was really rather exciting. I had my first Shirley Temple here at the Virginian, so that then when I got to the University of Virginia, I knew how to handle myself.
Around 40 or 41, they played the VMI-VPI football game here in Lynchburg. And it was traditionally in Roanoke. But they were building what they call the Victory Stadium in Roanoke, so they couldn't play there. So they transferred it to Lynchburg. And associated with that was always a festive occasion. And as I recall, the Virginian Hotel was kind of the center of a lot of the activities of Thanksgiving surrounding the VMI-VPI football game. And incidentally, VMI won 15-10. Sorry, Roanoke.
And domestic life continued around the nation. It can be difficult today to appreciate the importance of premiere showings of Hollywood films in the 1940s. In 2018, Hollywood released 814 movies in theaters. In 1942, pre-television Hollywood released only 106. Each release was considered momentous. The top films were launched with lavish first showings. There were bright lights, there were movie stars, there was national news coverage. Most premieres were in Hollywood. In 1942, Lynchburg hosted a movie premiere. The Vanishing Virginian was based on the memoirs of Lynchburg native Rebecca Yancey Williams. The movie was a valentine to her father, the central figure in this film. It was nostalgic, small-town Americana, and it was just what the country needed in wartime. Metro-Goldwyn Mayer sent Ruth Huzzy, fresh off a star turn with Cary Grant, Jimmy Stewart, and Katharine Hepburn in the Philadelphia Story, to add stardust to the two-day event. She was escorted by Virginia football star Bill Dudley. Lynchburg civic leaders hosted a luncheon at the Virginian for Huzzy, Dudley, and cast members from the film.
They had celebrities as guests, as the king and queen or whatever of the premiere weekend. And one was a movie actress of the day by the name of Ruth Huzzy. I remember her name. And and Bill Dudley. Of course, all us kids knew Bill Dudley. I was like 10 or 12 years old at the time, and or a little older. And when we heard Bill Dudley was going to be here and staying in the Virginian Hotel, of course, a couple of my buddies and I seized on this opportunity to meet Bill Dudley. So I think it was the legendary Victor Opperman and Tom Robertson and my buddies, and we just snuck into the side door of the Virginian Hotel. Security was minimal, and we just walked right on up to the 4th floor or wherever Bill was staying, and found his room, knocked on the door, and he was very cordial and he spoke to us, and of course that was a lot of excitement for me in the Virginian Hotel.
Change was everywhere in post-war America, and Lynchburg was no different. The city was still a manufacturing center, but the economy was becoming more diverse. In 1955, Babcock and Wilcox and General Electric opened plants in the city. New residents followed. Housing developments appeared. Retired Air Force pilot Vernon Dyke's father, Robin Calloway Dyke, worked at the Virginian as a bellhop for 10 years in the 1950s and 60s.
The last time I was here was with him. Probably on a Saturday morning. He used to work, like I said, as a bellhop, but we used to sell fish on Saturday morning out of a little panel body truck. And I would tag along behind him. I always wanted to be like him. And he would say, I got to stop at the hotel, Virginia Hotel. I got to pick up a uniform, or I got to see what my work schedule going to be, and that type of thing. So he would stop, and of course the hotel wasn't as big and nice as it is now, definitely not. And we used to come in, and I would stay right in the lobby there, and he would go and check and see what his schedule was and when he had to do it. I can remember him saying what such a nice place it was, Virginian Hotel, and very historic. And of course, he was a bellhop and used to carry people's luggage up to the rooms and clean up after the parties and all that. I can remember him bringing big trays of finger sandwiches home. I said, man, these are good. He'd bring those home after the parties that night. He always said he was busy. He said he was always busy here. I think he would work, well, he would drive the school bus in the mornings. Then he would work at Rubbertex when he left the school bus. Rubbertex in Bedford from about 9 to 3, I guess it was. I think it was at Fink's Jewelers. I don't know if he was working there at that time. Yeah. And then he would come here around 5 o'clock in the evening, I guess. So he had to work 3 jobs during that particular time. And he used to come here around 5 and get off around 10. Of course, back in those days, it was a little different time. He could work here, but blacks couldn't stay here. It was a good time. He took pride in what he did, and I can always remember the blue jacket he had. And like she would share that, Mama used to always keep those shirts so white and crisp, like star shirts. And the blues, I always remember that. And he would come in at nighttime. Sometime he'd get home around 10 or 10:30, something like that, or later, and bring food home and stuff like that. I think he works strictly for tips, I believe. I believe it was for tips.
I think he said that people really tip him very well.
Very well. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think he works strictly for tips.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I think so.
Dollar bag?
Probably 50 cents a bag.
Throughout the 50s, downtown Lynchburg was the place to be.
When my twin sister and I were young, we would come up periodically with our mother from Brookneal and shop at Milner's, an old department store, and she bought all of our clothes there. And of course, we would come to the Virginian Hotel for lunch dressed in our finest. We were not allowed to dress in shorts, long pants. We had to wear dresses that were starched and ironed. We had to wear shoes with socks. Could never wear shoes without socks. I can't remember whether or not we were allowed to wear saddle Oxfords to the Virginian. I tend to think not. I think we were always required to wear our best shoes.
Ruby slippers.
Our ruby slippers, yes. And most of the time, our white gloves. She required us to put on white gloves so that we would know how to properly behave at the Virginian. With coming from the country, we didn't have too much of a chance to be properly attired and show off our manners that our mother insisted that we use. She taught us superb manners, and we were expected to use those good manners. So we would come to the Virginian for lunch and come in the big dining room, and of course the tablecloths. The tables had tablecloths, of course, and we had the nice napkins, and our servers would open the napkins and put them in our laps. We were expected to keep our hands under the table until the food came. Probably the only part of those memories that I didn't like was having to put the dresses on that had been starched, and they were stiff and they were itchy and they were stiff, but that's okay. Look at those little twins. They're dressed exactly alike, and we were.
I'd wear a sunsuit on Church Street, but I wouldn't wear it on Main Street. I told my mother I had to dress to go to Main Street. Now, I don't know where I got that from. Of course, there was nice stores down there then. Remember Milner's and Guggenheimer's and Baldwin's and D. Moses?
The theaters were all downtown. You know, they had 3-4 theaters on Main Street. Okay. And the movies, this was obviously before television, so the movies were a big part of entertainment in those days.
When I finished high school, well, I got me a job there as a waitress. They had a head waiter and waitress, and waiters, and they were. We were all black. They had black waiters and waitresses. Sometimes I had, for lunch, I had regular people. You know, they'll come in and ask for me. We made good tips, but our salary wasn't good. We made $18 a week. But before I'd leave, I only worked the lunch and dinner. And before I'd leave on the night shift, I had about $180 in tips.
My sister-in-law worked here for many, many years. She was a waitress here. And there was different days that they was in uniform. I mean, everybody was in uniform. On one day they may have on all white, another time it may be black and white or whatever. And then they had to form the big handkerchiefs that they had, like a flower, and that's what they wore. And they had an alleyway back here, and they had to go up that alley and go through the whatever door was up there to get into here. The only black that you ever seen here was the bellhoppers, and there was 2 of them, always. They just stand out there with uniform. I mean, they look handsome and everything. And you could say hello, and that's all they did was nod at you. They was at attention at all times.
One of my happiest moments was coming down here to meet my mother to go shopping. My mother, she was the pastry cook, and she baked pastries, and it would just melt in your mouth. So they had a cook for everything, and she did all the desserts and pastries and stuff. She was raised with 11 siblings, and their mother died when they were young, with the 11th child. So they all took care of each other, of course, with their father, and he worked for the railroad. And so all of them were very talented when it came to cooking. And that was one of my happiest times, to be honest about it, because I knew when I came down here that we had to go through this alley, but I was down there with all those ladies, you know, and they were all talking and chit-chatting, and it was very social there. And they were always glad to see, you know, the children of those who worked down there come. Probably 12 years, because after I graduated, then she says, well, now I can go on and do something else. But that was her income to get me through school and to get me through life, yes. This is my first time even walking through the front door of this hotel, so I'm kind of excited.
As times and attitudes changed, segregation became particularly vexing for N.D. Page. He was powerless to challenge the status quo he deplored, both within the hotel's board of directors and across Southern society. He ended his long career at the hotel having never seen it come about.
People here became my family. What they called the bellboys in those days, you don't call that now. And the maids and the dining staff.
Throughout the 50s, the Virginian remained the venue of choice for special events in Lynchburg.
Because the hotel was still in business to do other things as well. It was the centerpiece for any kind of event in this area. The colleges supported it at that time.
I remember going to wedding receptions here when I got older, when friends married. And the ham biscuits were there, and elegant cake, and just superb service, and real champagne, not Shirley Temple's. So this was a place to have a wedding reception, and very elegant and very beautifully done. And often, I know my uncle provided the flowers for various and sundry events.
Married in Grace Memorial Episcopal Church. And then we had our reception year, 64 years ago, this past June the 4th. Well, it wasn't a buffet, it was hors d'oeuvres, more or less, and finger foods.
How many people did you have?
I think we made reservations for 100, and we ended up with about 75.
Then I was married here. Me coming down the staircase, you know, on my wedding day, throwing the bouquet and the garter to the groomsmen and the bridesmaids and so forth. That's right. And I'm so glad they've kept the staircase like it is.
For locals, the dining room remained the main attraction.
The Virginian was a big part of my younger childhood. Every other Friday night, I had dinner here. Every other Friday night, I spent the night with my aunt Eileen Hamner, who owned an advertising company and has most of the billboards in Lynchburg.
Oh, really?
But she did not drive, and she had an apartment downtown that was quite beautiful. So every other Friday night I was invited to spend the night with her, and we'd come here and have dinner. And then the next morning, we would either go to Bowen's and get a little trinket, or I'd be taken to Pearson's by the driver to get some candy before I went home. I mean, it's a crazy memory, but it was so much fun. There were always people milling around in the lobby, so you would see people you knew. So it was very much part of the, I guess, this part of a social scene. It was, in later years, more shabby chic than chic. She didn't cook, and she lived downtown and wanted to be comfortable, so the Virginian, I think, was where she ate most of her meals. And I don't ever remember seeing money change hands. I think she probably had a tab that would take care of whatever she needed for the month, because she only lived a block away.
Before liquor by the drink came to Lynchburg, downtowners had the option of joining the James River Club, a private club that shared the kitchen with the Virginian.
I got lucky to have to work downstairs at the James River Club. I worked the bar, bartender. Mr. Stewart, he was a member of the club. I knew him, so I asked him if they had any positions down there over there. And he told me, come over and we'll see. That's how I got a job, by knowing the right people, meeting the right people.
My father actually worked at the James River Country Club. And I can basically remember that when I was at the age where I could drive, I would bring my father to work. He was a maitre d'. He was a very well-groomed, meticulous man. His duties were very, very dear to him. He took everything very seriously working here. But he enjoyed his times here, that I do know. He even met his second wife here. She worked as I guess as a hostess in the James River Club as well.
2 years after General Electric opened their Lynchburg factory, future President Ronald Reagan visited as part of his 10-week General Electric Theater speaking tour. He spent the night at the Virginian and gave a press conference there. Afterwards, he delivered a speech at Monument Terrace. Following the speech, Reagan lingered on the street in front of the hotel to sign autographs. Reagan was one of many celebrities who passed through the doors of the Virginian over the years.
I met many famous people here. I met Helen Keller, who I'll never forget it, put her hands on my face and said, "What a pretty little girl." I'll never forget that. Met Gene Autry, saw Ronald Reagan. You know, when they opened up General Electric here, he was a spokesman for GE on TV. And I remember him coming through the dining room and shook hands with him. Jane Powell, she came here. The National Symphony would come every year from Washington, and so I got to know all of them. Remember Sammy Kaye's orchestra?
I remember the name, Sammy Kaye.
Sammy Kaye played really at the Roosevelt most of the time in New York, but he came here. And the piano player had a little girl named Barbara. And so he got me all the autographs for everybody in Sammy Kaye's orchestra. You remember Nelson Eddy? Okay, well, he came here. And he didn't want to mix at all with the hoi polloi. The people on the lobby, which was out here, was packed. And so my father had to take him down. He was going to the armory to do what he was going to do. And it was interesting that he had to take Nelson Eddy down on the freight elevator so he wouldn't mix with the people out there, which has always made me not want to watch any more Nelson Eddy movies because of that. Greer Garson, remember Greer Garson? Yeah, sure. She came here as part of a war bond drive. And she was in the middle of the lobby out there, and people were so crowded around her. Well, in those days, I could get on my knees. I was about maybe 7 years old, 6 or 7, maybe younger than that. And I crawled through everybody's legs and came up right under her. And she looked down and said, "Oh, sweet thing." I'll never forget it. Oh, you know. And was so nice to speak and so pretty, very pretty.
The post-war change in America took a turn in the 1960s. Established social norms fell away. Again, Lynchburg was no different. The beginning of the end of downtown as a retail center arrived in 1960. Pittman Plaza, the first suburban shopping mall in town, opened. It was the future, but a future that few could clearly see. On the heels of the robust 1950s, confidence in downtown remained high. The Virginian unveiled a new lobby in 1961. Ray Barnett made 48 cents an hour as a busboy at the Virginian.
My very first job was as a busboy downstairs below this floor. That would have been around 1964 when I was 15 years old. You were taught how to carry the tray. I can remember being taught how to carry the tray. And for some reason, for the longest time, I wanted to use two hands on the tray. But then you want to be like the others and use one hand. And there were times where we were so busy trying to get back to the tables that it seemed like to me there were swinging doors downstairs. I could just room swinging, always swinging, people going through, to and from. And the fellow employees I can remember them laughing and chuckle when I would come through, because they would say to me that they would always see the tray, the bus tray, but they didn't know who was carrying the tray. Because I was being short all my life. They would see the bus tray and the swinging doors before they would see the person that's carrying the tray. I enjoyed the job. I can recall at times, not because I was late getting to work, because I looked forward to coming to my first job, 15 years, so many months. I can recall running to work.
He retired after a successful career in banking and insurance. Traditions continued in the face of new realities.
I left Lynchburg in 1945 to go off to school. And I came back 15 years later and started to practice medicine. And my first office was right across the street from the Virginian Hotel in the Allied Arts Building. Everybody poured out of the Allied Arts Building, not everybody, but lots of people, lunchtime, to run across the street to the Virginian Hotel because they had a stock brokerage office in the lobby of the hotel with a big ticker tape across the big wall of the lobby. And people would come in there and during their lunch break to see whether they'd been wiped out or not.
There were so many doctors across from the Allied Arts Building and all around this area. There was a doctor's table for lunch every day. And I guess there were 20 doctors that came in every day for lunch.
In 1966, my wife and I married in June of '66, and I was getting ready to go to Oxford as a Fulbright Fellow that September. And we subleased an apartment here in Lynchburg before we left, because I was teaching summer school. And the last big dinner we had before we left to catch the United States and sail for England was here at the hotel. And the kitchen was still as good as I remembered it as a child. One thing about coming to lunch here, it's the first time I encountered the full outlay of silverware, the forks and spoons, and we didn't do that at home, of course, with two small children. And I looked at my aunt and said, which one do I pick up? And she taught me how to start at the outside and move in. And I remember when I went to Oxford, because I was a Fulbright Fellow, I was considered a scholar. And I was invited to dine at the head table. And there's all the silverware laid out. And this American didn't make any mistakes.
But change was unrelenting. The exodus from downtown gained momentum.
Many of the doctors and the people in his offices across the street moved away. Most all the doctors did. And then they built the Lynchburg General Hospital, and office buildings started cropping up right around the hospital. And I eventually did that too. Ended up there in the late 60s. That was the exodus.
The Academy of Music Theater closed and was replaced by movie houses outside downtown. More shopping centers opened.
They had the debutante balls and the Spinsters Ball here for Lynchburg, and I was fortunate enough to be one of the escorts for many of the young ladies, and they would always come down this staircase out here, which was a magnificent entrance. Ladies were upstairs, and all of the young men were downstairs, and they would bring them down one at a time, and spotlight would shine on them, and they'd come down the steps, and then if I was that one's escort, I'd do the first dance with her, and each girl had at least one or two escorts.
Why we wanted it here was because of the staircase.
Yeah, the fathers here, dates were at the bottom.
We're at the bottom lined up. And so you would be at the top and they would announce you and your dad and who your escort was.
So do you remember walking down the steps?
I do remember walking down the steps.
Oh, good.
I remember perfectly walking down the steps.
Jean, did you trip?
I did not trip. I didn't fall. I made it down in one piece, yes. But yeah, I remember standing at the top of the steps with Dad and looking down at everybody out here and just kind of freezing like, oh gosh, I hope I can get down these steps without falling.
Well, the girls, Jean's age group who was being presented, they were all in white.
Yeah, we all were
and it was their fathers and their escorts that were in tails. Everybody else would have been in tux and
maybe coat
black. Yeah.
But I definitely wore a white dress and carried red poinsettias.
Yeah. Somewhere Meg found a big screen of chicken wire, and we had to all go cut steel magnolia, and stuff it in this chicken wire screen so it made sort of a screen of green leaf. And I feel like it was
on both sides?
Yeah, on both sides or something. But I do think it was, we all knew the Virginian was, it was not what it had been. I mean, I think that by the time we would have had spinsters down here, it was chopped up. There were offices. I mean, it wasn't.
The carpet was, it smelled, and it smelled.
It did smell.
It was an aged lady by the time we were doing things.
I remember feeling, being excited about coming here because it's not a place you came frequently anymore, And
it still had elegant in my mind. I got a silver thimble. That was the symbol of the spinsters, a silver thimble. Yeah. I do still have my silver thimble.
So you could darn socks. I dipped mine in gold and put it on my charm bracelet.
My grandmother-in-law, my husband's grandmother, would have been at Randolph-Macon it would have been either the late teens or the early 20s, probably the early 20s. But anyway, then it was a very elegant place, and the girls' parents probably would have brought them down here, or to come to the Virginian for dinner would have been huge. So her erstwhile, I think, fiance brought her down here, and she said they got served dinner, and he kept clinking his spoon in the glass of his iced tea to stir the sugar up. She said she just decided she could not marry somebody that was going to clink their spoon in their glass.
Especially at the Virginia.
Yeah, and so, lo and behold, she did, and she married Sandy's grandfather.
Like most cities in America, Lynchburg now spread rapidly out and away from downtown. The city grew as downtown became dormant. When motels with generous parking space opened up, the end came. In 1969, the hotel was auctioned off. The building saw continued life as the Stewart Arms Hotel, which rented rooms for extended stays. In 1973, the building was purchased by Liberty Baptist College, now Liberty University. It became the first dormitory for the school. Mark Hine was an entering freshman. Today, he is Senior Vice President for Student Affairs at Liberty.
But came here as a student in the August of 1973. This hotel had just been purchased, I believe, by a donor and given to the school to be used as a dormitory because the school was fast growing and running out of space for beds. Well, when we showed up here, they were literally still moving Army surplus furniture into the building. There were dump trucks parked in the alley. Some of the old hotel furniture was actually being tossed out the window into the beds of these dump trucks, unfortunately. A lot of the furniture they kept, and we used the nightstands and the desks and the dressers and things like that. But it was Army surplus, I think bought from Richmond, came in big box trucks, and we actually helped unload the furniture, take it up on the elevators. There were 2 at the time in the main entryway out here outside. So the smaller rooms would be like doubles. Those were the rooms that you wanted to be assigned to. Then there were larger rooms that probably were parts of suites, and there would be up to 6 or 8 students in those. So they were bunking everything and using old metal military bunk beds. I got assigned to room 440, which was absolutely a wonderful thing because it was a corner room, and we could open the window on the back of the hotel and open the window on the side of the hotel facing into the alley, and we got a cross breeze because it was really hot in August in Virginia. There were 2 widow ladies who lived in the hotel that Doc Sr. said allow them to continue to live here. The main stairwell, which was off the lobby out here by the front doors, was used by the ladies in the building, and the guys in the building used the back stairwell on the back corner. So yeah, we were pretty tight then. They didn't even let us use the same stairwell. I laugh now when I think of it. We had all kinds of mischief. We had, on weekends, they were declared like the water fight weekends. And so sometimes the water would be cascading down the stairwell. We dumped so much water on each other. For the first whole semester, the boiler in the basement was broken, and so there were cold showers for everyone. So I learned to take like a really fast shower, because in the cold months the water was really cold. Eventually they got the boiler fixed and we got hot water, which that was a great day. I saw bugs that I'd never seen before in my life, and there were plenty of them. I always thought, you know, if there ever were a building that was worthy of like total restoration, it would be this building. Because eventually I would become a resident director, and my first assignment was here in the Stewart Arms Hotel. So I worked alongside Tom Webb. He was the maintenance guy here. And Mr. Webb taught me how to string the ropes in the old windows that had weights on them. They'd be broken, and the windows, you know, if you got them up, they would slam down and break the glass, that sort of thing. And I went all over this building, fixing leaky faucets, repairing light switches. Mr. Webb taught me so many things because he'd been doing maintenance, I guess, in this building for quite some time. I think he was here when we came. I met my now wife of 41 years right out here in the lobby, standing in line waiting to eat dinner one night. And we used to sit over on that wall and talk, and eventually I would ask her to marry me, and 41 years later, 3 daughters, 7 grandkids, and we met right here in this building. A lot of my journey in life, the foundation was built in this building. So I can go like different places now and say, wow, I remember this prayer meeting. You know, for me, I remember making a commitment to serve God in this spot.
In 1982, the building was sold to the Lynchburg Redevelopment and Housing Authority. The upper floors were renovated for low-income housing, and the large, elegant first-floor spaces were enclosed and used for storage. They would remain closed for the next 30 years. And the once grand hotel faded from memory. It would be an historic renovation of all 6 floors, a conversion of the building into an upscale boutique hotel with full food, beverage, and banquet services. Renovation began in 2015, a full restoration. Bedrooms, conference rooms, banquet halls, the grand lobby, a library, a coffee shop, a restaurant. There would also be something new, a rooftop bar. In 2015, the hotel became part of the Hilton Worldwide Curio Collection. The work of Grayson Ferguson, Lynchburg fabricators of custom wood products, touched every room in the building. Richard Simsick was a manager for the project.
This was very early on when you were just really gutting the place. And I walked in, and it was amazing to see. I mean, the water heaters laying all over the place. It smelled. It was just a total mess. Actually walked back into this area with the plaster falling off, but you could see the beauty of what was here. The first thing they contracted us to do were the moldings in the place, and that was really all we were going to get, was just the moldings. We ended up getting a lot of stuff here. We ended up doing the front desk, the gift shop, the library, the coffee shop, the walnut cabinets, the bar and the coffee shop, the Skyline bar, the Moore and Giles suite. We did the cabinets in there. Those are all ripped and quartered white oak. Did the front doors, did the side doors. We did the doors that are going off to the balcony here. Everything we do is custom, everything. And so it's almost always, when we're doing it, it's for the first time. We just designed them as we go. We come down here and, of course, take references off of what was already here. The rest was for the cabinets and things like that. We just designed things, and then they were approved. When they were repairing sections of the handrails, the beautiful handrails that go up stairs and downstairs, we made those sections that they needed reproduced. Used the same material and matched the profiles exactly. And they would just cut them in and sand it, to fit perfectly, and then finish it to look like it's always been there.
Brandy Daly was a project manager during the construction.
Managing schedules is a big part of it. Managing inventory like construction materials, all of the furniture, fixtures, equipment for the hotel. We had to order and inventory and then make sure it was installed properly and cleaned properly and maintained properly until we actually got the doors open. What else did we do? Managing our subcontractors. So anyone that touched anything in the building, like carpet, tile, our marble floors, any of the woodworking, the trim in the building. So managing the very skilled hands that went into that work. That it was a difficult project, to say the least. It came with a lot of challenges just due to the nature of the size and the history contained within the building and the elements that we were trying to restore to make sure that it still had its character that it had in its originality. The last several months before opening, we had a great crew who put in their time and were very dedicated to make sure that we got where we needed to get. This is actually my first construction project. I didn't know what I was biting off when I said yes, but I'm really glad that I did.
It got built.
It did, yes, it did.
The Virginian reopened her doors in 2018. She was an emblem of the ascension of Lynchburg in the 20th century, a leader in a confident time. She became a harbinger of downtown Lynchburg's mid-century decline and a melancholy reminder of what had been lost. Today, she leads again.
Oh my goodness, Dad worked there.
But one of my happiest moments was coming down here to meet my mother.
People here became my family.
Be properly attired and show off our manners that our mother.
I was in the family for over 100 years.
It's a crazy memory, but it was so much fun.
So, my very first job.
He worked 7 days a week here, and he loved it.
She would hear the roar of planes and go and say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and call up 5 girls.
Here, looking at the staircase and saying, the last time I think I was in here, I walked down the staircase with my dad.
My journey in life, the foundation was built in this building.
A real treat for us and for all.
And that's my story.
It took hundreds of people doing hundreds of jobs to bring the Virginian back to life. Here they are.
And we'd come down the hill, and one time the lights were out. It had Hotel Virginian in the lights, and it said Hot Virgin. And
Yeah, for a long time.
It stayed that way for quite a while.
Yeah,
it stayed that way.
I enjoyed the job. I can recall at times, not because I was late getting to work, because I look forward to coming to my first job, 15 years, so many months. I can recall running to work, running